Tighten Up, the podcast, is brought to you by Hyperice, the leading provider of innovative technology for recovery, mobility, and improved performance. They help the Titans. They can help you too. Learn more online at hyperice.com.
Hey guys, it's Antoine Davis. Let's tighten up.
Detroit, it's time to tighten up. Welcome to Tighten Up, the podcast, presented by The Shield NIL. Brought to you by Hyperice and Last Shot Energy. A state of the Titans, the latest in Detroit Mercy athletics, and a chance to hear from Titans all over the world. Here's your host, Dan Hasty.
And we are back. It is another edition of Tighten Up, the podcast. And now that we've gotten Mark Montgomery in under our belts, and a huge thanks to both head coaches, Kate Ochter of women's basketball, Mark Montgomery of men's basketball. We go back to back with the head coaches over our last two episodes, and we have some dynamite guests lined up as we get into 2025. Our first of which is a media specialist at the University of Detroit Mercy. Nobody spends as much time around this basketball program than Alex Khorey. Alex, talk to me. Good to see you. And we finally get a chance to get you on this show. And look, you put a lot of time and energy and effort into this program. And not a lot of people see your work behind the scenes. It's good work. It's been going on for a while now. So to those who are not familiar with what you do, tell the people some of your responsibilities.
Sure. So, kind of like you said, I'm a media specialist in the department. I work under PJ Gradowski, the sports information director. I've been working in the department since October of 2022, which would have been my sophomore year. My freshman year, I was on the track team. But then after, I didn't continue with that into the next couple of years of my life. So I figured, what am I going to do? I like sports. I had a communications class my freshman year. I figured, got to start thinking about life after school. So I reached out to PJ and he was like, hey, I don't really know where I can use you, but I could use the help. And I started out as a production intern, holding cameras on ESPN Plus broadcasts and running wires to PJ during the games and doing different things, stat calling, things like that. And I just kept doing it, kept around. He told me from the first day he couldn't pay me, that everything was going to be volunteer, and it was all experience based. And I was like, hey, I can't complain about that. This is a D1 department. This is legitimate experience. But then moving into this year, we added a grad assistant in the department as well, who's a photographer, Jack Moreland, he's done some really great work as well. But, I came to PJ in the summer and I was basically just like, what do you need from me? I'd love to do something more hands-on and day-to-day. And he was like, I think we should do more work in the video aspect. And I was like, yeah, I think that's a great idea too. So women's and men's soccer was just starting up in the fall. And I just figured, hey, I know basketball is the gem here and is really what's going to look for the content to take, not just basketball, but UDM's brand to the next level. So I was like, I got soccer here. And I was like, I'm going to use these couple months, figure it out. I'd never really done any videography before. But so basically I run the social media or the Instagram, at least for the basketball team, do different kind of creative conception in terms of videos. So if you saw the baseline to baseline video, I came up with the idea for that just came out. Any kind of creative type of mix that will get put up on the account will be something that I would have made. And if you see kind of like the graphics that we did, for example, like with Legend in Orlando after the Eastern game, that's kind of have a half and half between the other GA. So he made the graphic and took the photos and I made the video. So we have a nice little team. It's small, but it's a good team.
And thus you're around the guys, and in the women's team's case, the ladies, that much more often. And today, more than in any past season, you need your team's stuff to be out there. You need it to be on social media. You need it to be across platforms. How do you feel like that is being impacted, even just this year versus the previous years?
Sure. And, talking about this year, you got to go back a little bit. Last year, we actually lost our Instagram account as soon as the season started due to like a verification issue or something like that. So we basically had to start a new Instagram back up from scratch for men's basketball. So I can just tell you from that point on, I think we were at like 200 or 300 followers. We're all the way up to 2,000, and we were at 900 in August. So, we're up followers wise, we're up views wise. That's really due also as well to Instagram's new collaboration. So multiple accounts can post the same things and get the same outreach, just more extensively. But to answer your question, it's huge. When you go 1-31, your brand is at zero. No matter how you put it, it's at zero. There really can't be any, because all the publicity you're getting is negative. And there's spotlights in that can be found, like the one-man court storm and things like that. But you're starting essentially a new program. You've got Coach Montgomery; he's used to media at Michigan State and things like that. And you've got Coach Kate, who's also building a program up. She's just a little bit farther in that she's been here for longer. But it's huge. It's a historic program. There's so much to work with. It's not like we just went D1 10 years ago. There's so many people that have been through that building. And while we don't have necessarily a ton of archived footage that isn't, on old VHS, that's really expensive to digitize and things like that, we do have stories, and we do have people, and we have that brand that's already established from the 118 seasons of Titan basketball before. All we have to do is put it together and meet the algorithm of today and meet the needs of what people are viewing today, so that not only can our brand get bigger, but sponsorships can improve, ticket sales can improve, merch sales can improve, all those things, because what people are seeing on social media, and especially in a time of decreased cable and things like that, I mean, it's all at your own fingertips to push your own brand.
And honestly, the thing I like is that it feels like this group, whether it be players, and it kind of feels like players nowadays, like they get it, like they will be willing participants when it comes to things that happen on socials, but also coaching staffs. Like they know that if they're going to be reaching out to guys, whether it be high school seniors or kids in JUCO or kids in the transfer portal, like those are going to be avenues that they need to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'll use this term probably 100 times, but it's an extension of a bigger brand. I'll take, just first one off my head, like you take a school like Tennessee, the first thing you think of is orange, right? You take their point guard, Zakai Ziegler. He's a New York kid, didn't have a lot of offers coming out of high school, whatever. But that brand is so large, and he's such a good player that now all I'm associating with in my head is, oh wow, Dalton Connect might be gone from Tennessee, but I think that Zakai Ziegler is still there. And once you go on their media and you look to elaborate on that, all you're going to see is his face. And then before you know it, you've lost yourself in the trance of creative branding. All you're understanding is Tennessee basketball, good, orange. You know what I mean? It's very like simplistic things like that. And the same thing could happen at Detroit Mercy. It just takes a lot of integrated strategy and honestly just time for things to happen and for things to play out and for different things, strategies to be taken and things like that. To ensure growth.
And now that you've seen the way they started the season, I would imagine that you noticed the numbers start to change, especially the first handful of games as the season began. What did you notice, especially the way the season began?
Sure. That's a great question. I would say first and foremost, anytime a win happens, the game day graphic probably does, or the final score graphic probably does better than any other post that we could make if it's a winning game, because of how many students on campus will repost it and other types of fans and things like that. So I think the Vol State game, and I heard Coach Monty talking about that as a big bonding experience for the team as well, but I thought it was also a big breaking point for us in terms of media credibility. When you're posting, you can make as many creative videos as you want, but at a certain point, sports are about winning and losing. So finally being able to get, that win and be able to post something like that just opened up the floodgates. And, it also adds to guys' confidence and things like that to come out and win the Eastern game. And I would say, if anything, that as well as the legend shot were probably the two biggest media interactions we've had on the year. And I just think, like you said, I think you said it perfectly. I think that it's starting to go, but I also think it's light years from where we can go in terms of media.
Tighten Up is brought to you by Last Shot Premium Hydration, the official hydration drink of Tighten Up, the podcast. Their revolutionary formula is jam-packed with vitamin B12 and 0 grams of sugar. It helps the Titans hydrate, replenish, and recover. Try it at Callahan Hall during a Titans game or learn more at lastshotofficial.com.
This is my 7th season being around this program. I mean, at least in this capacity. And in the first 6 years, we had approximately one, like, almost last second buzzer beater type shot. One in 6 years. And Legend shot was pretty much as last second as it had ever gotten. So to get that first conference game, I mean, I feel like somebody like you was like set for life, or at least set for the year.
I have to say I totally agree. And I actually told that guys the same thing in the Niagara game as well. I was talking to Mac in class, and I was just like, man, like, do you know how many times we've lost that game, like, in the past? And where he's just like, I know, man. It's just like so great to finally get a win. And with the Fort Wayne one as well, I mean, I could name games off the top of my head. You know, Northern Kentucky 2023, Antoine comes down and has a chance for the game winner. He missed it. Liddell had a gimme right at the hoop, and it didn't go in. And it was just one of those shots that rolls off the rim. And I remember that team just being so depleted afterwards. And Northern Kentucky won the conference that year and went to the tournament. So just kind of shows you like what it can do for a team's morale when those shots go in. So I totally agree. And I thought, you know, it was a 1:00 game. I thought just the whole entire aspect of that game felt different. It was fun. You know, there wasn't a ton of students there, but the ones that were there, I think they probably felt the same way. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe we won. You know, so I totally agree.
And I think it also reminds everybody just how loud that building has the potential of getting, because even with the crowd being what it was, that place can hold a lot of volume. I don't know if it's the architecture or what exactly it is, but it still has a lot of potential if you can get people inside that building. So tell me a little bit about what you saw from Sunday. Of course, for those who missed it, Detroit Mercy played against the Youngstown State Penguins, and on Sunday, it was Youngstown State that got off to a big early start. They ended up taking down Detroit Mercy. Titans lost 73-64. All things considered, Youngstown State, they were a pretty big favorite in this game, and Detroit Mercy did narrow the gap late in the contest, but Alex, obviously it was a pretty big start, and the Titans just never recovered.
Sure. Well, I mean, I wasn't there, so I was at home. So I watched from my house. But in terms of the basketball, I think, you know, first thing to my head is it was great to see E-Man back out there. You know, for a guy with so many injury issues just in his career, for him to be able to come back, and I know it was really just more of a cleanup type of procedure that he had on his knee, but it's just great to see him out there. And I know he struggled a little bit shooting it. He didn't make a three, but to come out and get 7 and 9 in your first game back, especially with a big like Dines, who's just large and is going to go up, and he's 7'3", he's going to get rebounds. And he had a nice block on him at the rim. But I think it's just tough. They shot 2 for 16 from 3, and you don't win a lot of games like that in the modern basketball. It's tough. I thought Orlando did a really good job of getting downhill and trying to create for himself. I thought he missed a few shots early that I've seen him make, a ton of times. But he was getting to the pull-up jumper, he was hitting it. But I also think that it's just off the top of my head, I can only think of 2 post buckets, and that's the Legend, the dump into Legend, and he got a hook. And I think E-Man had a little push shot as well. So they're going to have to find a way to get it inside a little bit more. I know they like that low post entry pass. That's a big set that they run. So maybe just establishing that a little earlier. Kind of like the first possession of the game. I don't know if it was like just unlucky or what, but they went to Legend inside. They wanted to work there, and it kind of got ripped and taken away for an easy layup, 5 seconds into the game. And that's probably the last way you want to start a game. But I think the most important thing about that is, first of all, Youngstown's a really good team. I mean, they took Syracuse to 3 overtimes or whatever it was. They can, they've been good in this league. They have a lot of NIL. They're competitive. But But at the same time, I thought they could have came out and they could have quit. They started so poorly, at least, just shooting the ball, at least. They could have came out and they could have quit. They could have, especially guys on the bench, could have quit easily. If you're only playing 7-8 minutes and you're down 15, sometimes I think it's, at least in the past, maybe, guys might say, oh, well, like, what's the point? Like, I'm trying to get out of Youngstown. It's a Sunday afternoon, it's New Year's is coming up, whatever it is, but they didn't quit. And I think that really does embody that this team is bought in to what Coach Monty is saying. And they're playing for him. They're playing for him.
Gabe Dines feels like he should not be allowed in the Horizon League. For those who don't know, this guy is 7 feet 3 inches tall, and per 40 minutes, he's averaging 6 blocks per game. he's averaging 7 points, 5 boards, and 3 blocks in 21 minutes per game. And just to imagine what he probably looks like on the court if you've never seen him, he looks exactly the way you probably picture him.
No, definitely. I remember he came to Callahan last year. He was hurt, but he was sitting on the end of the bench, and I was just like, oh man, like this guy. It stands out at this level. I mean, really at any level of college basketball, if you're over 7 foot, even over like 6'11", you're going to stand out like a sore thumb. And he makes impact plays when he's out there, even though he's maybe $165 soaking wet. He still makes some impact plays.
And what's tough is that right now, I mean, you're really starting to feel that loss or those losses, whether it's Mansell or Larry, the Jer Bear. But I mean, Mansell and Larry, I mean, those are two of the guys who you were probably counting on to be two of your most consistent 3-point shooters. And I mean, all of a sudden you look and they're 2 for 16 in that game against Youngstown State. And I know you get Emmanuel Quach back, and maybe you can get something more from him as he starts to get comfortable. But that's an area that you start to worry about as the season goes on. You hope they can find a way to figure that out.
Yeah, I hope so. I think, first just to say to Larry is what you're losing with him is just how many 6'6" ball handlers do you know in the Horizon League? You know what I mean? It's hard to even name a lot of. The only one that comes to my mind in all of college basketball is Thero for Arkansas. So it's just such a specialty to be able to have somebody like that. And he was at Aquinas. He was really starting to adapt to the difference in the play styles and the levels of being at D1. And also Mac is just he's such a good player. He can explode. I mean, I don't know how many threes he hit against Niagara, but to be able to come out and have 30 points with how he started the year shooting last year, I mean, you saw that the talent's there. And I think, again, with them, he's 6'4". He's not small either. So on the defensive end, I think that they're hurting there without those two at the top of the perimeter. But obviously, like you said, I mean, the shooting is so tough to lose two guys when you're already a defensive-minded team. To lose scores makes it so hard. And I think, I don't know what the number is, but probably 23 or 24 points a game you're losing from Mac and Jared not being out there is just so tough to come over, which is just going to make the freshmen have to step up more.
So a lot of people have asked me, and I know you're around these guys in this program almost on a daily basis, but Mac Mansell played 5 games before the injury he suffered that finished his season. Meanwhile, Jared Larry, he played 9 games before his injury. So help me understand what that does to their eligibility situation going into next season. If they are, in fact, out for the year, what does their eligibility look like as far as you understand it?
Sure. So, I mean, I can more speak from how I understand the new NCAA waiver rule, which is that, it used to be that, if you played 11 games throughout the course of a year and you brought it to the NCAA next year and they could decide if you played a certain percentage of games, that they give you another year, but it's not like that anymore. The NCAA is really only catering to injuries in the first half of the season. So injury waivers are due at the end of December. So I think, and I don't know this for a fact, a guy like Mac could have definitely made a push to be back at the end of the season. But, when you're dealing with an ankle and things like that, you've got it's not just about the ankle coming back into place. It's about the ligaments gaining strength. It's about you being able to, your proprioceptors in your ankle being able to move laterally and things of that nature. So I think for someone like him, it was more of just a genuine precaution. And, someone who wants to preserve that eligibility. I mean, he already had another year because he missed his year at Arkansas State. So regardless, it's not like he would have been done at the end. But you look at a guy like that, having 2 years versus having 1 year makes a big difference. And Larry's actually would be the same way. And obviously he has an ACL tear, so it's not like he was going to come back out anyways. But basically for both of those guys, it just comes down to, they're both able to get their waivers submitted. I mean, I don't know if they did or not, but as the rule stands, they would both be able to get their years back if their waivers were submitted by the end of this month. And I know both guys personally. I don't really know necessarily what they're planning on doing next year, but I can definitely say that they enjoy being around. I mean, I've had a ton of classes with Mac. He's my go-to group project partner in communication. Me and him just did a presentation for our PR class, a couple weeks ago. But I know that he loves being back home. I can just speak for Mac specifically. And so I wouldn't be surprised if I saw him or Larry back in a Titan uniform next year. I wouldn't be surprised.
So is Mac doing all the work and you're just kind of like coasting yourself to an A in that class?
Mac is a great presenter. So I may be doing a little bit more behind the scenes, and he gets up there on game day and he shows out. I'll definitely say that he's got a smile, and we get up there and we work well together in presentations. It was good. It was a good presentation.
I just realized that between those two getting essentially 2 more years, hypothetically, that also means that Legend Jeter, Orlando Lovejoy could also hypothetically, between their senior year and a grad year, could also potentially have 2 more years.
Yeah, I guess that would come down to their freshman years and things like that. I mean, I know Legend was at Providence, but he didn't play, so that would have been a red shirt. So he would have another year. And I know Orlando had some injuries and things like that when he was at Eastern. So I can't speak to the specifics of it, but potentially, yes. You could definitely see an additional year of eligibility if they would have it.
It's kind of cool. And I didn't see this coming early in the year, but Miles Mitchell really figured a way to get off the concrete bench that he was stuck on early in the year. I mean, it looked like he was not going to get a shot. It looked like he was going to be a red shirt. And I mean, he had some pretty legitimate offers coming out, and he just sort of forced his way in. Now, granted, some injuries happen, and that also doesn't hurt in that situation if you're trying to make your way into a situation. But all of a sudden, Miles Mitchell, like a couple of other guys, are now being thrust into an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I love Miles. He's such a personable guy, and I think he really is just appreciative to be at the D1 level, and that kind of goes along with his personality. I don't think he's a kind of person that is always looking for the next situation. I think he's looking to take advantage of the situation that he's in. And I don't really know a lot of 6'10" guys who can jump like him. Honestly, I mean, you get guys that can jump, but he can move. I mean, he can definitely move, but at the same time, it's different playing at the high school level especially in the post than playing in the college level. He's getting 4 boards a game. They say, I forget what is it. It's grown man rebounds. They said he gets the most grown man rebounds on the team. He will go up and get it. So in terms of being a freshman, he's not scared in that aspect. It's really more, in terms of when you got the ball and you're backing down in the post, maybe, rather than, I think he might've did it in the game yesterday. Don't put the ball on the ground and get stripped. You know what I mean? Kind of have your head up. It's just one of those things that will come with more playing time. But the athleticism is there. And that's what you can't teach. So I would definitely say that about him. And as for other freshmen, I think TJ's coming along really well. I think you can kind of see it in his progression that, he played at Catholic Central, in the Catholic League and things like that. So you can dribble a lot more in that league than you can at the Division I level if you don't have a super tight handle. So I think he's doing a little bit better of getting to his spot off the ball. And also when he has the ball, just one dribble pull up, get to it. I thought he did a really good job against Wake Forest doing that. There's actually a video on the Instagram you can kind of see. It's highlights from those games. And he gets 2 guys on just like the meanest pump fake, one dribble pull up. And you can kind of just see their face. And I think one of them might be Hunter Salas, who might be a lottery pick. And you can just kind of see their face. And they're just like, man, like he really just pumped me so bad. So I think he's been great. He hit 2 shots in the Youngstown game. And I also think, obviously, you can talk about Nate, Grant, and the rest. There's so many of them. I'm almost getting winded going through the list. But to answer your question, yes, I think Miles has tremendous ceiling. Tremendous.
And the thing is, you look, and most of these guys are averaging 3-4 rebounds per game. Nothing all that much that stands out individually, but as a team, they really get after it.
No, they get after it. I mean, and they out rebounded Youngstown, I think 47-44 or something like that. That's impressive when there's a 7'3" guy on the floor, and you've got 3 freshman bigs out there, and you come out and win the rebound battle. I mean, that's something to hang your hat on as a positive, no matter what the result of the game is. And I think the cool thing about, and I'll talk about the front court first. I think the cool thing about it is that they rebound differently. It's not that they're all traditional 5s down there going vertical to try to get a rebound. You've got Steve-O, who's a little bit more of a bruiser. You've got Miles, who is kind of your vertical rebounder. Then you've got Kalambe, who's more of a secure, maybe a box out type of guy. And obviously E-Man, he's going to outjump everybody he's going to go up and get a rebound with too. But from the guard aspect, they really do get to that ball. And I know a big thing that they tend to work on is not leaking out on long rebounds and things like that on defense, trying to get easy layups, but coming back to the ball and getting those rebounds. And I think something that really stands out is Orlando's averaging 4.5, which is crazy because how many minutes he plays, how much the ball is in his hand, and they're not really offensive rebounds, they're defensive rebounds. And it's just I saw something from the strength account that he produced 3,200. I forget what the unit is, but pure force. And the second closest one in the athletics department was a couple hundred low. He's just really, really explosive and strong, within his own body type. And guys like that are always going to be able to get their own shot. Guys like that are always going to be able to, look like they belong on the court. And, he's setting the example. And then, like you said, there's multiple guys with 3-4 rebounds. Those add up, especially when you're playing a deep rotation.
And now all of a sudden you look as the season sort of evolved, and, I'm sure you've looked at this too, but it's really fun to go look at Grant Gondrzik's game log because you go to November and there's not a whole lot to look at. But as soon as the calendar flips, all of a sudden he goes from about 10 minutes a game to about 30 minutes a night. And he's getting 10 to 20 shots a game. It's all of a sudden not just that he's put into being a high minute player, because sometimes you can be a high minute player and you don't take a lot of shots. But all of a sudden, Gondrzik is one of the top options, overnight. And it's one of my favorite things about what has happened to him over the course of this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote this actually in the preview I did for the Horizon. I didn't really have a lot written for Grant, but I just had 3 words: he can go. Simple as that. And I don't think there's a lot of specifics to break down about his game, but at the same time, he's just one of those guys that you get the ball in his hand and he can make things happen with it. And I think, he'll get better and better as he uses, gets better at using screens, gets better at, moving the ball to get it back, things like that. But I think, like you said, that shot volume is a crazy increase. You don't really ever see something like that. You don't see somebody coming out, taking 1 or 2 shots, maybe 3, whatever it is. And then obviously the injuries play a part in that as well. But, somebody who's been given the volume and he hasn't shied away from it. I think that's the most impressive thing about it. To be someone, he didn't play last year when he was at Elon. He ended up going home, but to be able to come here in this environment and win the ball, and maybe it doesn't bounce your way immediately at first, but when it does, you're able to shoot it with no hesitation and get to the hoop. No hesitation, just be fearless. He's a little bit of a smaller guy, but he can get up too. He dunks like crazy. He's a great player, truly. So he has not shied away from the moment, and hopefully you can just keep getting more reps. I would say that for really any guy on the team, maybe apart from a few of the older guys, but they just got to get more reps, and it'll just start to even itself out.
Meanwhile, we've already kind of thought this is a team that needs more shooting. They've already acknowledged that they are a team that needs more shooting. And they just so happen, and I think they're still probably looking to add more pieces as the recruiting windows roll on as we get into next season. But the two guys that they've already signed on, Lance Stone, Jaquel Cotton, those are two guys who they think can really shoot the basketball. What do you know about those two?
Sure. So I know, I'll start with Lance. It's great to have someone who comes in as a coach's son, whether they're on the staff like his dad is, or
they tend to do well around here.
They do. Yeah, that's true as well. But, even just, if it was his high school coach, I think they have an ability to see the game a little bit differently and take coaching a little bit better. Just because it doesn't seem as if it's coming from like a place of, they don't get defensive necessarily. So I think for someone like him, I mean, he's a smaller guy, but it's not going to matter. The athleticism's there, the passing is there. I mean, I think he had an offer from somewhere in the SEC. So clearly it's not just something either where he's just getting the chance to be here because, his dad's on the staff. There was other guys who wanted him and, big guys at that with resources. And he still wants to come in here and, we need somebody to handle the rock. Every team does, you know what I mean? And whatever capacity that's in, I don't know. But at the same time, if he's a more of a distributing one to Orlando's scoring type of one, that would be great. That's a great contrast. And I can also say just really quick from a media perspective, his commitment post had like maybe 200,000 impressions that brought to the page. So, he's a Detroit name. That's kind of the program that they're trying to build. That's a big get, even from that perspective. And then as for Jaquel, I know he was hurt his junior year. He's coming on really well this year in his senior year. So just to be able to get high school guys in is so nice. And, I like bringing in transfers from schools who have been around because at least, they've been in a college program. But at the same time, if you go to 2 or 3 schools, sometimes the problem might lie with you. You know what I mean? Versus a high school kid might be a little bit more mandible and you might be able to get into them before and break a couple habits. Versus transfer, you're just kind of trying to get what you can out of them because they've already been places and they've already seen things like that. So just to be able to get high school kids that are going to be able to make an impact, for the second year in a row, it feels almost unprecedented in a program like this. So I think that'll be huge. And even just having freshmen on campus in Shipool is huge. I remember my freshman year, we didn't have any freshmen on the team. There was just literally no freshmen on the team. Maybe we had one, but he lived in quads, like the upperclassmen dorms. So just even having them on campus, and I tell the guys this myself, is like, people are going to come to the games if they know you. People are going to come root for something that they understand. Like it's not, we don't have this like big social aspect around our games like something like Michigan State would. People aren't just going to show up and be loud. People are going to show up because it's worth giving their 7 to 9 on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night for. And the more that you're going to do that is to be active on campus, which I think Coach Monty's done a great job of getting them active on campus and just seeing them around, but also just, making relationships in class like that. And the easiest way to do that is by being in the freshman dorms and sticking around for a few years because I'll tell you, as a student who's gone through Detroit Mercy, a lot of kids transfer, but the kids who stick around, are your best friends in the world because it's like, hey, like I really respect you for sticking around. And things like that, go a long way into supporting, things like basketball as well, not even just, relationships.
And what have you seen from Monty? Because I've noticed it. I mean, and maybe it's because of the stuff that you've done with social. And by the way, like, that scene in Jerry Maguire, like you had me at hello. I feel like Lance Stone had you at 200,000 impressions, but that's not here nor there. But I feel like with Monty, you saw these different things that were being put up on Instagram and Facebook and X and these types of things. And it's just stuff that we had seen other coaches doing locally, but we hadn't really seen a whole lot of around here recently. So to be able to see that felt like something that has been, I don't want to say necessary, but it certainly seemed like something that we had been waiting for a while.
Sure. And I think the thing about, Coach Monty that stands out the most in regards to that question is just, I think he's hungry to win. I think he inherited a bad situation at Northern Illinois. They're the worst team in MAC history by winning percentage in basketball. And they've had a team. They've been in the MAC since like 1982. So I think he took a perennial loser, and he really did make a push there towards the end to getting them in the tournament. But unfortunately, COVID kind of took his best year away from him. And then, before he knew it, the next year they had a bad start and he was out of there and, back at MSU kind of back in his roots. And I think when he got here, I think not only was the situation, really convenient for him in terms of, being back home and being able to get Detroit kids and things like that, but I also think that he wants to win. So I think that, his understanding and, being at a program like Michigan State that, like we said, has big media presences and things like that. I think, he's his own, I think he's got ambitions too. And I think that that's a symbiotic relationship for the program. If he wants to win, then he'll get wins out of those guys, and I think that's a very positive thing. And I think that, his understanding that, media can be very useful is only going to help him in achieving that.
What else have you noticed about this team that is of interest to you, whether it be the start or the last handful of games? I mean, they've got Robert Morris in Milwaukee coming up, and Robert Morris is a little bit better than I think people thought. 9-5, Milwaukee. They're about what people thought they were. Shout out to Dennis Green. But I think, we think about those two teams like that pretty much is just about where we thought one of those teams would be. But all of a sudden, this has turned into a pretty big weekend for the Titans, especially being at home.
Do you just mean in terms of the two games coming up specifically? Yeah, sure. So I think, starting with Robert Morris, Andy Toole's been there forever. I'm a Pittsburgh guy. I'm from Pittsburgh. And they were the premier mid-major program, and Duquesne's a lot bigger than them, and they've got a lot more resources. But, there was nights when I was in middle school, elementary school, and my dad was taking me to go see Lucky Jones at the old Robert Morris Arena before they even got a new one. So that program is legit. And I know they've had a little bit of a tough adjustment to being in the league, but they're going to come. They're well coached. They're going to come and they're going to play hard. They always seem to have scrappy guards. They always seem to have an undersized big that really gets a lot of rebounds. So, I mean, in terms of that game specifically, we're just going to have to come out and be tough. And I don't think that that's anything that we haven't done this year. I think that we're a very tough team. I think we've got a lot of grit, similar to the Lions who play in a few minutes here. But I think they've got a lot of grit. And I think, coming out in that game especially is going to be important. And that's a game that you can eke out even if you don't have your scoring. You know what I mean? You're missing a lot of those things. And as for Milwaukee, they've got a lot of talent on that team. Barlendy's a great coach. That's a good program. They're gritty in a different way. They're a little bit flashier, a little bit more athletic and things like that. But at the same time, they do play good basketball. They share the ball. Pullman is a great player. The kid they got from Queens, also a great player. So it's going to be a little bit of a taller task for that game. But at the same time, you're at home. Winning in college basketball is very favorable at home. So if you come out and execute sets and Milwaukee gets a little flustered, that's a long trip for them. Odds are they're tired. You can wear them down, things like that. So I think that both of these are winnable games. I really think any team in the league is a winnable game, especially that team up in Rochester. I think that's an ultra winnable game. I think they're going to shoot themselves out of the gym more than a few times this year. But I truly think that if they come out and they execute and they keep the turnovers low, they can truly beat any team in this league.
And you can surprise them. I distinctly remember a game last season in the Horizon League tournament with about 6 minutes left, and a 1-30 Detroit Mercy team had a lead in that first round game against Bart Lundy's team in their building. So look, a lot of crazier things can happen, especially when you have them on your own court. All right, so before we get you out of here, we do got to talk women's basketball because they're off to just the most unreal start, the best start for their program in nearly 50 years. They're 9-2 to begin their season, 6-0 already at home. They got a win at Valpo in double overtime, and then they went to Robert Morris and picked up another victory. Now they get a New Year's Day game coming up against IU Indy. And after we talk about this, we'll also set the table for what's coming up this week in Titan territory. But tell me a little bit about what you've gathered from what's gone on with Kate Octor's team.
Sure. I'm not in the I don't do a lot of work for women's basketball in general. They have their own videographer, EJ. He's great at what he does. Honestly, a lot better than me. He's a lot more experienced. He's great at what he does. But I can say, just from being around for a long time. I remember my freshman year, just living in the dorms, it's not a lot to do. We'd go to the women's games, and I mean, it was just awful. Like, they were just not competitive. And I knew a couple girls on that team and who ended up, becoming great pieces on the team last year down the road. And they were younger back then. But I mean, that team, I remember, I can just say a story. Like, one time there was a player suspended for a game, and she had showed up in the second half with like a brown bag full of liquor and was just like chirping at the rest of the players from the top deck of Callahan. And I was like, man, like, this program really has to figure some things out. Like, this is off the wall. To be able to come in and just eke out a tournament win last year, a conference tournament win, is huge. And I know this year they're off to like their best start since 1987. And I think you can kind of see, we talked about history at the beginning for the men's program. I think, there's only one jersey hanging in the rafters on the women's side. And that's kind of a little bit unusual, when you've got 9 jerseys on the other end, or however many it is. So for them to be able to start something with continuity, and for them to win games and make their games matter, and to beat old out of conference foes in Valpo, and go on the road to Robert Morris and pick up a win. I mean, that's a big deal for any program. So for her to be able to do it as fast as she's been able to do it is extremely impressive. I sit up in the press box gondola sometimes, and I'll just like do my work up there during their practice. And I mean, I have to respect the way that she runs her practice. It's no nonsense. It's very business aspect. But at the same time, I think, and I think in the pod was a great example of that, or if she's just kind of around the building, I think she has a very, calm demeanor as well, when it's not basketball, which is great. And that attracts kids that want to play for you, because you're going to get the most out of them on the court, but you're also going to nurture that relationship outside of it, which I think is very commendable on her part. It's for her and Coach Bonnie, it's a tough job, but, at the end of the day, you're leading young men and young women, to get something out of this experience to better their own lives down the road. So I think that she embodies that, and she does a great job of that.
You're going in the gondola? Really? That I give you credit. That is bravery at its finest.
It is old.
Good for you. Well, this week coming up in Titan territory, it's all at Callahan Hall on January the 1st. It is women's basketball against IU Indy. That's the New Year's party. January the 2nd, Robert Morris is in town. Be a special day. It's Earl Curitan Day. You can get an EC button and a shirt. Then on the 4th, it is Dress Like a Superhero. I'll be dressed like Alex Khorey and win a prize. Then on January 5th, women's basketball gets Cleveland State. It is special Titans Day reunion. You can get tickets at DetroitTitans.com. You think about what Kate Octor has done. It really is one of the most amazing things. But what's really cool is, like, this is a women's team that won one game before Kate Octor and her staff got there. The next year, they won 5 games. The following year, they were just a tick over 500. And this year, they're doing this. Well, a year ago, men's basketball won how many games? 1 game. And right now, men's basketball has 5 wins. So I'm hoping that we're not going to be sitting on 5 wins for the rest of the season. But, you sit there and you look at how this has kind of worked itself through. Hopefully we'll be having a couple of more wins after this weekend. But look, Alex, good stuff from you. Appreciate you coming on the show. This is fun. Hopefully we'll do it again soon. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. Go Titans.
Tell the people where they can find you on social media.
They can find me at Detroit Mercy Men's Basketball, of course, if you want to see any content I post, but just Alex Khorey is my personal account. You reach out to me if you're interested in having a conversation like me and Dan did today.
And that's AK. You're the man. Thanks, dude.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That is Alex Khorey right here on Tighten Up the Podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of today's show. Thanks to all of you for watching. We have much more to come in the weeks ahead as we kick off 2025. A special guest in our next show. Can't say exactly who it is yet, but I promise you have heard of him. You've been hearing his name a lot in recent years. That's coming up soon. That's going to do it for today's show. Don't forget to follow me on X at that Dan Hasty and on Instagram at Dan Hasty. Again, we'll talk to you soon. I'll talk to all of you titans of industry next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Tighten Up, the podcast. Join our community at The Shield on theshieldnil.org and follow us on X and Instagram at theshieldnil.
If I can tell you one thing above all else as part of this show, it would be this. If you're unfamiliar, if you haven't done it before, join the community at The Shield Online. It's online at theshieldnil.org. That's theshieldnil.org.